The story begins in the prison of the Silver Dragon Dungeon, guarded by two formidable dragon sentinels. A silver dragon queen named Roswace arrived, ordering the guards to leave as she wished to speak with the prisoner alone. Chained in the prison was the great dragon-slaying hero. With a sly smile, she asked him how it felt to be a prisoner of the Dragon Clan. His reply was simple. He wanted to die. Amused by his desire for a swift death, she approached him, touching his chin. It wasn't easy for he was both handsome and defiant. Slowly, she traced her sharp nail across his face, making a small cut, savoring the thought of adding more to mar his perfect features. He turned his head away, refusing to let her humiliate him any further. She could kill him or tear him apart if she wished. He only hoped she'd be quicker about it. Despite his great power, he had been betrayed by a villain, leaving him in this wretched state. The Dragon Queen licked the blood from his wound and suggested he join the Silver Dragon Clan. He mocked her, questioning if she was worthy of such an ally. Infuriated, she lashed out, whipping him with her tail. His body slammed into the wall with a resounding crash. Standing over him, she placed her foot on his chest, incredulous that a mere prisoner would dare insult her. This was no ordinary man. His name was Leon Cosmo, once the celebrated hero of humanity, praised by thousands. But now, broken and defeated, he could no longer believe in his former greatness. His dreams of wiping out the Dragon Clan and leaving behind a legacy for future generations had crumbled. The Dragon Queen sneered, telling him to accept his fate. He would die here. She pressed her foot harder into his chest, reminding him that any chance of a future filled with wealth and glory had vanished. Without an heir, he would leave nothing behind. Leon warned her not to underestimate humans. With a swift motion, the Dragon Queen wrapped her tail around his neck, thinking how stubborn he was. As she tightened her grip, she asked if he was ready to beg for mercy. But Leon remained calm, revealing that she had made two critical mistakes from the very beginning. First, he said, you should never have been alone with the most powerful dragon slayer. And second, you should never have tasted my blood. Suddenly, Leon activated a forbidden technique known as the blood curse. The Dragon Queen instantly released her hold on him, stepping back in shock. A strange sensation overwhelmed her, and to her horror, she felt an uncontrollable lust take over her body. She collapsed to her knees, trembling. Leon approached, his eyes cold and calculating. You will live the rest of your life in pain, he declared, a torment that will gnaw at your soul. Her desire intensified, and before she could think, she lunged at him, knocking him to the ground. Leon, taken aback, couldn't comprehend what was happening. The Dragon Queen, consumed by the curse, kissed him, causing him to blush. For the next hour, they were locked in a bizarre and heated encounter. Finally, the blood curse began to fade, and with it, her control over her body returned. She quickly pulled away, confusion and anger in her eyes. What have you done to me? She demanded. Leon calmly explained, the blood curse is a forbidden technique, one that can only be used once in a lifetime. When you tasted my blood, it created a bond between our souls. Once I die, the curse will cause you endless suffering. The Dragon Queen scoffed, still trying to make sense of the situation. If this curse takes effect after death, then why did this happen? She asked. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Leon frowned. It seemed the curse had an unexpected side effect, one even he hadn't predicted. I thought the pain you'd feel upon my death would be the extent of it, he admitted. But apparently, there's more to the spell than I knew. Blushing, the Dragon Queen realized what this meant. Dragons were bound by strict codes of monogamy, and the bond created by the blood curse would doom her future. After Leon's death, she would be unable to take another mate, bear offspring, or explain to the Dragon Clan what had happened. Leon was surprised by the unintended consequences of the spell. The irony wasn't lost on him. She had mocked him for not having a successor, but now, neither would she. She launched into the attack, but Leon stopped her, saying, You don't need to do this. I'm going to die soon anyway. As his eyes began to close, he gave one final request, that the Dragon Queen live with hatred for him, and feel pain for the rest of her life. This was his curse as a human, his parting revenge. The Dragon Queen hesitated, holding back from delivering the final blow. Moments later, Leon breathed his last. She couldn't believe it. This mere human had taken his revenge in such a despicable way. But she wasn't about to let him have the last word so easily. Using her power, she marked Leon's chest with the emblem of the silver dragon. Leon Cosmo had once been a legend, a hero revered by all. At the age of 5, he had killed a vicious dog with his bare hands, an act witnessed by a master dragon slayer passing by. Seeing potential in the boy, the slayer took him in as an apprentice. By the age of 10, Leon entered the prestigious Imperial Dragon Slayer Academy, and 4 years later, he graduated as the youngest and most highly evaluated student in its history. At just 15, Leon marched onto the battlefield, slaying dragons and reclaiming territory for the Empire. His name spread across the land as the strongest dragon slayer, the Empire's beacon of hope to end the war. That was until he was captured and enslaved by the Dragon Clan. 2 years had passed since that fateful day. Leon awoke with a scream, his hand instinctively flying to his chest. Gradually, his breathing slowed as he calmed down. Looking around, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. Confused, he wondered where he was, when suddenly the door opened. A small girl entered, and Leon was struck by her innocence and beauty. He blinked, trying to understand what was happening. Rising from the bed, he gazed at the girl. Her presence so pure he thought she must be an angel. Surely he had died and ascended to heaven after his immense service to humanity. But his assumption was wrong. "What's your name?" Leon asked, still in disbelief. The girl smiled sweetly. "Muin." Though her response made him feel strangely happy, something about her was odd. Her hair, black and white, seemed unlike anything he'd ever seen. Muin mentioned that her mother told her the name meant the moon, which left Leon confused. Did angels even have mothers? Introducing himself, Leon was startled when the little girl excitedly responded that Leon meant lion. Surprised, he asked how she knew that. She smiled and said it was what her mother had told her. Feeling a sense of unease, Leon asked, "What's your mother's name?" "Rosweiss," Muin replied cheerfully. Leon froze. Hearing the name, he quickly pieced it together. He was her father. Muin confirmed it with a joyful grin. Panic surged through him. How could this be possible? How could he have a child with Rosweiss? Just then, Muin turned toward the door, where her mother stood, sending a chill down Leon's spine. "Mama! Daddy's awake!" Muin called out, running toward her. Rosweiss's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't the one her daughter imagined. Muin assumed her mother was happy, since she visited him every day. But as Rosweiss stroked her daughter's head, she wore a wicked grin. "Go outside and play, dear," Rosweiss said sweetly. "Your father and I need to talk." Once Muin left the room, Leon stared at Rosweiss in disbelief. "Is Muin really our daughter?" "Yes," she confirmed, closing the door behind her with her tail. "She's our biological child." Leon's mind raced. "Why did you have the child?" he demanded. "Why did you save me?" Rosweiss revealed that Leon had been asleep for 2 years. She hadn't forgotten what he'd done to her, and she wasn't going to let it go. Leon's anger flared. He hadn't meant for any of that to happen. "We're different," he growled. "We can't coexist. I would have never touched you if things had been different." Seeing the torment in his eyes, Rosweiss's expression darkened. "Oh? It was torture for you, was it?" She wrapped her tail around his leg, yanking him onto the bed. Climbing on top of him, she tore his shirt open and, with a cold gleam in her eyes, activated a spell. She was going to carve her own dragon mark into him, binding him to her forever. Even though Leon begged her not to, Rosweiss touched his chest, and a glowing magic circle appeared. This mark was to become his eternal shame. From this moment on, he would be her prisoner, bound to her forever, unable to leave. When his companions saw the dragon tattoo on his body, they would believe he had betrayed them and surrendered to the Dragon Clan. Leon still couldn't understand why she was doing this. Revenge among the dragon race was a mystery that had baffled human scientists for years. Their vengeance was not just extreme, it was an inhuman, paranoid obsession beyond human comprehension. For the Dragon Queen, it wasn't enough to defeat him. She wanted him to live in shame and suffer humiliation for the rest of his life. As the spell took hold, Leon began to feel an overwhelming desire he couldn't control. For the Silver Dragon Queen, it was a great honor to break Leon, the greatest dragon slayer in human history, and make him her slave, her closest companion. Now that he was fully under the spell, she climbed on top of him, deciding it was time to make him hers in every way. At the Silver Dragon Castle, even the maids noticed the queen was in an unusually good mood. Word spread quickly. The Dragon Queen's husband had finally awakened. Leon, overhearing this from a hidden corner, was shocked. She had publicly declared him her husband. No one knew just how terrifying she truly was. She had spent the entire day and night with him, and poor Leon's body was nearly broken. His waist felt as if it had been shattered. Furious, Leon swore he would not stay here to be her plaything. Stealthily, he slipped out of his room and made his way to the side door of the castle. But 4 dragon guards stood watch. Escape seemed impossible. The castle was eerily quiet, with far fewer guards than there had been 2 years ago. Something was strange about all of this. While Leon was figuring out how to avoid the guards, he stumbled upon a hidden hole in the grass. Silently, he approached it and saw a faint light coming from the other side. Unsure if it was a trap, he decided not to dwell on it. He had to escape no matter what. Even if it was a trap, he would force his way through. Without hesitation, Leon began crawling through the narrow tunnel. He muttered a sarcastic farewell to the perverted Dragon Queen, and as for little Mewen, though she was adorable, she would have to stay behind for now. Meanwhile, on the balcony, Mewen ran to her mother, excitedly announcing, "Father is digging a hole for the dog." The Dragon Queen, lounging in a bikini and sipping wine, chuckled at Leon's audacity. Mewen eagerly asked, "When are you going to fish him back?" Rossweiss scolded her gently, saying that fish was too rude. "Say catch him back instead," she corrected with a smirk. Mewen, a bit confused, nodded and agreed. As night fell, Leon finally managed to escape the castle and darted into the nearby forest. He knew if he could climb the mountains ahead, he'd be able to see the border of human territory. After running for hours, Leon felt confident that the Dragon Queen wouldn't be able to catch up to him. But to his dismay, the sky suddenly darkened, and the Dragon Queen, now in her true dragon form, appeared above him, praising him for being such a fast runner. Seeing her, Leon cursed his luck and bolted, but Rossweiss quickly landed in front of him, blocking his path. To his surprise, she wasn't angry. In fact, she seemed quite pleased. "Impressive, Leon," she said with a wicked smile. "I was the one who distracted the guards for you, and I left that little hole for you to find." Although Leon knew it was a trap, he had no other choice. He hadn't expected her to catch up with him so quickly. Returning to human territory now, marked with the Dragon Queen's seal on his chest, no one would recognize him as a dragon slayer. But Leon didn't care anymore. He was determined to start over as an ordinary man, believing it was far better than being tortured by her. Seeing his defiance, the Dragon Queen spread her wings, furious that he didn't appreciate her kindness. She grabbed him with her claw, and together they soared toward human territory. After 3 hours of flight, night fell, and the Dragon Queen released Leon near the border city of the Empire, sending him tumbling through the trees before crashing headfirst onto the ground. Dazed, Leon's headache vanished when he realized he was close to a human village. The Dragon Queen, now in her human form, confirmed they were indeed within the human empire's borders. For most, the sight of a familiar city brought hope, just one step away from returning to the human world. But for Leon, that hope felt unreachable. Suddenly, the mark on his chest began to glow. The Dragon Queen had neglected to mention an important detail. When one of the 2 bearers of the dragon mark desired intimacy, the mark would compel the other. As she touched his chest, Leon felt an overwhelming heat and desire surging through him, impossible to resist. She had brought him here to demonstrate his shame, forcing him to confront it in front of his homeland. But Leon wasn't about to give up. Grabbing her arm, he decided to bide his time, patiently waiting for the right opportunity to strike back. He swore to repay her double for every humiliation she had inflicted on him. The Dragon Queen, surprised but amused, smiled and agreed to his challenge, saying she would wait for him, dead or alive. As the moon rose, the two of them moved to a tree near the border city of the Empire, their twisted fate bound by the mark and their rivalry. They had been clapping for several hours, leaving the Dragon Queen more than satisfied. Meanwhile, poor Leon was exhausted and quietly crying, drained of both energy and pride. As she touched his chest, she casually decided that from now on, she would bring him back every month to his hometown for more sessions. She was lost in her own thoughts, fantasizing about how to further wear down poor Leon. Satisfied for the moment, the Dragon Queen declared it was time to leave. After all, their daughter was waiting at home. But Leon, his spirit still somewhat intact, stopped her. He refused to be dragged back as her prey. As a dragon slayer, he would walk on his own, with what little dignity he had left. She raised an eyebrow, explaining that it would take 3 hours to fly back to the Silver Dragon Castle at her speed, while it would take a human like Leon 10 days, maybe even half a month to walk. Despite this, Leon stubbornly insisted on going on foot, asking her not to underestimate human endurance. Amused, the Dragon Queen smiled, intrigued to see how long he could hold out. After a while, Leon's steps became slower, his exhaustion clear. She silently followed him, waiting for him to admit he was too tired so she could scoop him up and fly. But Leon, though on the verge of collapsing, refused to admit defeat. Mocking him, she teased, "The only tough thing about you is your mouth." Just then, they spotted several knights from the Dragon Slayer army patrolling nearby. Leon's heart leaped with hope. These men could help him escape her grasp. But the Dragon Queen quickly sensed his thoughts, her aura turning deadly. She warned him with her eyes. If he called for help, she wouldn't hesitate to kill him. One of the knights approached, noticing their presence. "Are you lost?" he asked politely. Leon quickly lied, saying they were simply out for a walk. Deep down, he couldn't bear to involve innocents in his twisted situation. The knight, dismounting from his horse, introduced himself as the captain of the 47th Squadron of the Imperial Dragon Slayers. He pointed out that this jungle wasn't the safest place for a casual stroll due to the dangerous wildlife and species that roamed it. He kindly offered to escort them. Leon panicked, his hands shaking as he quickly thanked the captain for his kindness, insisting that they had learned some self-defense techniques and could handle themselves. In truth, he didn't want the captain to come any closer. The captain seemed to recognize Leon's face, which put the Dragon Queen on high alert. Her eyes narrowed and she subtly began to channel her power, preparing to eliminate the captain if necessary. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Leon acted fast. He grabbed the Dragon Queen's hand and pulled her close to his chest, telling the captain with a nervous smile that he had been mistaken for someone else. He joked that he had such a common face. Even his wife, the Dragon Queen herself, sometimes mistook him for someone else. Leaning in, Leon whispered desperately in her ear, begging her to play along. He promised that if she helped him get rid of the knights, he would obediently return with her. Amused, the Dragon Queen decided to humor him. Both began to put on a convincing display of affection, with Leon holding her close in a mock display of love. The captain, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden outpouring of affection, smiled awkwardly and excused himself, no longer interested in disturbing their romantic moment. As soon as the knights were out of sight, Leon released the Dragon Queen, who was visibly irritated. Realizing his mistake, he quickly stepped back. "You were smart not to ask for help," she remarked coldly, "but let's get one thing straight. Just because we have a child together, that doesn't make me your wife." Leon, still catching his breath, responded, "I never intended to be your husband." The Dragon Queen smirked, satisfied with his answer. She turned to leave, reminding him they had a long journey ahead. But before they could set off, Leon suddenly felt a sharp pain in his hand, and moments later, he collapsed unconscious. Seeing this, the Dragon Queen sighed, amused by how fragile humans could be. Without hesitation, she transformed into her dragon form, gently picked Leon up in her mouth and tossed him onto her back. Taking his collapse as a silent plea for mercy, she spread her wings and flew toward the Silver Dragon Castle, pleased with how things had turned out. The next day at Silver Dragon Castle, Leon woke up to find little Mewan sitting beside his bed. Confused, he wondered how he had ended up back at the castle. Mewan cheerfully explained that her mom had brought him back. It didn't take long for Leon to realize that he had finally been captured like prey. Glancing at his hand, he noticed it was bandaged, with a neat little bow tied around it. Mewan proudly took his hand, explaining that she had done the bandaging herself, clearly hoping for praise. Leon smiled and gently stroked her head, realizing how different she was from what the dragonologists had said about her kind. Dragons were supposed to be fierce, raised in violence and blood from childhood. Yet, despite her dragon traits, Mewan showed no hostility. She treated him with the warmth of a daughter, leaving him to wonder if this was because she was a human-dragon hybrid. He patted her head affectionately, telling her how amazing she was. "Mewan, you're very cute," he said with a smile, then added teasingly, "But when you grow up, don't be like your mother." From the doorway, the Dragon Queen's voice cut in. "And what's wrong with being like me?" Leon froze, startled, realizing she had overheard him. Nervously, he tried to change the subject. Mewan, meanwhile, eagerly showed her mother the bandaged hand, explaining that she had followed her mom's instructions perfectly. The Dragon Queen remained cold, giving no praise. "That's what you should do," she replied coolly. Mewan simply nodded in understanding, used to her mother's strictness. Trying to lighten the mood, Leon patted Mewan's head again. "Why don't you go hide in the garden?" he suggested. "I'll count to 100, and then I'll come find you." Mewan's eyes lit up with excitement at the thought of playing hide-and-seek. As she ran off to hide, Leon glanced at the Dragon Queen, muttering to himself, "I'm definitely not like her mother." Then, he began to count as Mewan disappeared into the garden. Once Mewan left the room, Leon turned to the Dragon Queen and asked why she was being so hard on her. Sitting on the bed, she explained that all dragons were strict with their children from a young age to cultivate strong warriors. Leon countered that Mewan was not entirely a dragon, and besides, she was very cute. The Dragon Queen scoffed, stating that Mewan was indeed a dragon, and that cute was a derogatory term for one of her kind. Leon thought the Dragon Queen was also quite cute, but his comment only fueled her fury. In a swift motion, she grabbed him by the shirt, reminding him that he was just a slave for her to vent her anger on, and was not allowed to outshine her. Leon understood her position, and her mood seemed to lift slightly. After all, she was the Dragon Queen of the Silver Dragon clan, burdened with many governmental matters. As a result, she entrusted him with the responsibility of taking care of Mewan. Leaning in close, she whispered in his ear that Mewan liked him. Feeling overwhelmed, Leon made his way to the fountain, wishing he could escape the responsibility of caring for children, especially as a dragon slayer. Suddenly, he spotted Mewan hiding behind a pillar, clearly underestimating his ability to find her. Pointing at her, he declared, "I found you!" But she remained still, prompting him to question whether she was upset. Apologizing for making her wait, he was taken aback when she suddenly took off running. Leon chased after her, asking, "Why are you running?" Mewan turned a corner, causing Leon to lose sight of her. For him, predicting the mood of a child was quite difficult. He no longer doubted why the Dragon Queen had entrusted him with the task of caring for the little one. Just as he was starting to worry, Mewan appeared behind him and wrapped him in a hug, leaving him surprised. Confused, he recalled that she had just run past him, but Mewan insisted otherwise, explaining that since her dad hadn't found her, she had gone out to look for him. Though still bewildered, Leon decided he must have seen things wrong. Mewan took him by the hand, urging him to follow her as she had something special to show him. Just then, another girl, resembling Mewan, emerged from behind her and watched them in silence. That day, once the fountains were turned on, little Mewan began to shake her head excitedly. She was painting some drawings and having the time of her life. Leon, sitting behind her, couldn't help but smile at the sight, feeling a wave of tenderness. Having a daughter felt good. For the first time, it seemed his soul had begun to heal. While Muin enjoyed herself, Leon clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, deciding it was time to escape the Dragon Queen's grasp. Just then, Muin ran toward him, eager to show him a family drawing she had made. Leon extended his hand with a cheerful smile, ready to praise her. But as he examined the drawing, shock washed over him. Muin had depicted two girls. Initially thinking it was a mistake due to her age, he pointed to the other child in the drawing and asked, "Why are there two children?" With a tender smile, Muin replied, "The other child is my older sister." Upon hearing that Muin had an older sister, Leon panicked. It didn't take long for him to realize that the girl he had seen earlier was not an illusion. The child he had spotted in the garden must be Muin's older sister. He regretted not calling her by name, which had likely caused her to feel upset. However, Muin reassured him that her sister wasn't angry. She was simply a little shy at seeing their dad. Leon rested his hand under his chin, reflecting on the fact that he had never met her before. It made sense that they were unfamiliar with each other. Today was a splendid day, and Leon couldn't shake the feeling that it was all the Dragon Queen's fault for hiding this information from him. He resolved to find her and demand some clarity. Meanwhile, in the Silver Dragon Castle, the Dragon Queen had gone to the library. As she read through some letters, a little messenger dragon arrived with a new message. Just then, the sound of footsteps approaching the library caught her attention. She and the little dragon watched the door intently, and moments later, Leon burst in, clearly furious. He called for her attention as she tucked the letter back into its envelope. With a calm demeanor, she asked him what he wanted. Leon stepped up to the table and explained that he had been playing with Muin and discovered that she had an older sister. He pressed her about when she planned to inform him of this other daughter. The Dragon Queen smiled, somewhat puzzled by his confusion at the revelation. Leon slammed his hand on the table with determination, thanking the Dragon Queen for her hard work. He hadn't expected her to have two children, and it was clear she had put in a tremendous effort. He resolved that when he returned to the Empire one day, he would add her name to his family tree. The Dragon Queen remained calm, a smile gracing her lips as she asked him if he understood why she hadn't mentioned her older daughter before. Leon speculated that she might be jealous of his closeness with Muin, fearing that Noah would come to see him. The Dragon Queen was somewhat taken aback by his eagerness to meet Noah. Unlike her, a cold and stern mother, Leon wanted to nurture a good relationship with his daughter. With a soft smile, the Dragon Queen decided to grant Leon's wish, but warned him to consider his choice carefully. As the hours passed and darkness began to settle, Leon headed to the kitchen, a smile stretching across his face as he started cutting some carrots. Today, he was determined to show the Dragon Queen how things should be done. His first step in approaching his eldest daughter was to whet her appetite with a delicious meal. He set to work preparing a hearty meat stew with cream, a dish he often made during his time with the team. Everyone who had tried it claimed it was exceptional, and the sweet flavor was perfect for children. Using a spoon, Leon sampled the stew, savoring its rich taste. He hadn't forgotten how to cook, and as he clenched his fist in determination, he imagined Noah's smile as she declared that she loved the dishes her dad made. He believed that with this flavorful meal, he could win her over. As he stirred the pot, two maids watched him curiously through the window. One of them couldn't help but feel excited. Leon had just recovered from a serious illness, and for the sake of his family, he had taken it upon himself to cook. To the maids, Leon was the epitome of a good husband, one who genuinely cared for his home. Just then, the Dragon Queen and her two daughters entered the kitchen, with Muin eagerly greeting the maids. The Dragon Queen, wanting to create a more relaxed atmosphere for dinner, ordered the maids to take a break. They bowed their heads respectfully and replied, "Understood." As Leon prepared the food and set it on the table, he carried the steaming stew just as the Dragon Queen entered the dining area. Little Muin rushed toward him, drawn by the delicious aroma wafting through the air. With a smile, Leon said, "I heard you both enjoy meat. so I made a special stew and fillet just for you." He hoped that this meal would convey his affection to Noah. To his surprise, Noah seemed indifferent to the feast before her gaze wandering elsewhere. Leon was left in shock, confused by her lack of interest. The Dragon Queen smiled knowingly, and in that moment, Leon's frustration flared. He realized that the Dragon Queen had anticipated this reaction, which explained why she had been reluctant for him to meet Noah. It was their first meeting, and the Dragon Queen prompted Noah to introduce herself. Obediently, Noah replied, "I am Noah, the eldest daughter of the Silver Dragon Queen Rosways," proudly noting that she was 1 year and 2 months old. Dragons were a long-lived race, and young dragons matured much faster than human children. Leon approached her, extending his hand in greeting. "I'm your dad," he introduced himself, hoping to make a good impression. To his surprise, Noah seemed mesmerized by him. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that her indifference was unsettling. He wondered why she appeared so distant, and whether she harbored any resentment toward him. Noticing the awkward tension, Mewan gently took Noah by the arm and whispered, urging her to engage in conversation so their dad wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But Noah's response stung Leon. "He seems very weak, and I'm not sure he's really our dad." Those words hit Leon like arrows, forcing him to confront the reality of his situation. It quickly became clear that he was facing the first crisis in his new role as Papa Leon. He wipes his face with a cloth, reflecting on the harshness of the situation, convinced that his daughter may actually be trying to challenge him. Despite the difficulties, he steels himself for what lies ahead. Noah firmly rejects something, her determined expression revealing her unwavering resolve. Whatever she is saying no to, it's clear she's standing her ground with conviction. The family sits around a table in an elegant dining room. The atmosphere is tense as they exchange subtle glances, with Mewan quietly seeking help. The twins sit side by side, their similarities apparent, yet their contrasting personalities show even in this quiet moment. Noah eats attentively while Mewan engages in conversation. Leon looks warmly at Noah, asking if she's enjoying the meal, his tone filled with care and curiosity. Suddenly, the peaceful atmosphere is shattered as Noah cries out, and Leon, sitting at the table, reels in shock from the unexpected outburst. Watching the scene unfold, Roswazek covers her mouth in amusement, clearly entertained by the chaos. Mewan, noticing her mother's laughter and joy, curiously asks why she's so happy. Leon joins in, laughing along with the others, expressing how being surrounded by family fills him with joy. Mewan excitedly asks if their father will join them for dinner every day, her face glowing with hope. But Noah, with a serious expression, quickly rejects the idea, making her stance clear. Puzzled, Mewan asks why her sister doesn't want them to eat together daily, struggling to understand her reasoning. Their mother calmly questions the urgency of joining a prestigious academy designed for dragons, wondering why her daughter is in such a rush. With confidence, Noah declares her desire to defeat even more dragon subordinates, her determination shining through. Meanwhile, Leon, wiping his face in disbelief, begins to realize she might even be planning to surpass him someday. Gently, he warns her about the dangers of battling fierce dragons, worried for her safety given her young age. Annoyed, Noah crosses her arms and insists she's not a child, much to her father's exasperation. Rosways agrees with her daughter's eagerness to start learning early, believing it will better prepare her to face dragon subordinates in the future. Turning to Leon, she asks if he has a specific reason for wanting to prevent their daughter's education, subtly challenging his concerns. Leon contemplates in frustration, realizing that if he continues to oppose her ambitions, his daughter will only grow more determined to challenge him. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he dismisses his concerns and decides to remain silent for now. Reluctantly, Leon acknowledges that he understands the situation, though he's visibly frustrated. In his mind, he envisions Rosways using the dinner setting as a psychological game, aiming to mentally overwhelm him. With a smirk, Rosways warns Leon to be cautious, as decisions about their daughter's future are made swiftly, leaving him visibly stressed. Noah is informed that the academy's entrance exam is in a month, and her father will help her prepare during this time, to which she enthusiastically agrees. As the family dinner concludes, they playfully talk about how full they are, teasing each other lightheartedly. Rosways turns, calling out in a serious tone, catching the attention of someone nearby. Leon gestures to the table, pointing out that the dishes haven't been cleared, expecting some action. Rosways calmly replies that such tasks are best left to others, subtly dismissing his concern. Leon suggests that a proper family dinner should end with both husband and wife cleaning up together. He hints at whether Rosways truly wants to uphold a harmonious family image for the children, or if it's merely for show. The child eagerly awaits the elder's approval, her excitement unmistakable, as Rosways reluctantly agrees with a calm expression. The child, brimming with enthusiasm, declares her desire to help, her energy contagious as she eagerly reaches out, determined to be part of the action. Suddenly, Noah finds herself being pulled along in confusion, struggling to keep up with her sister's quick pace as the scene shifts to a quiet kitchen with dishes left in the sink. Rosways confronts Leon, asking pointedly when he plans to lend a hand. Leon crosses his arms and sternly reminds her of something he told her 2 years ago. Rosways, however, firmly asserts her refusal to deal with someone who has undergone rigorous training, her body radiating with power. Leon stands confidently, demanding to know Rosways' intentions with a sharp tone, reflecting on how he used to be easily manipulated. But things have changed. Rosways launches a powerful attack, warning him not to think he can escape so easily. Leon catches her strike with a firm grip, standing his ground and asking with a smirk, "Who said I was trying to escape?" Rosways groans in pain, struggling to maintain her strength, while Leon taunts her for being unable to fight back, mockingly calling her a fallen queen. He smugly explains how the effects of the dragon's mark have weakened her, comparing her to a helpless kitten, as he reveals newfound knowledge from her tribe's ancient texts. Sensing her shock, he taunts her thirst for control. Rosways, stunned, questions whether he has ever truly been conquered. Breathing heavily, her face flushed with emotion, she demands her tail be released, indicating that she's being restrained. Leon, holding her tail, speaks in a calm yet menacing tone, accusing her of disrespecting his dignity since the day he awoke. His smug expression contrasts sharply with her shocked, vulnerable state, as she glares at him angrily. Rosways responds fiercely, refusing to submit and calling him a bastard, her emotions boiling over as she challenges his dominance. She stares at him, clearly taken aback by his bold actions. Meanwhile, 2 maids gossip in the hallway, wondering if the queen and her family have finished their private time, their curiosity hinting at something unusual happening inside. Peeking into the kitchen, they're shocked to find it sparkling clean, as if someone had meticulously scrubbed every corner. The maids speculate whether the prince is responsible for the surprising tidiness. One of them, delighted by the spotless state of the kitchen, happily holds up a polished plate. Meanwhile, Leon stands silently, observing the situation with a calm yet focused expression. Holding Rosways tightly, he warns her to stay quiet to avoid discovery by the maids, mocking her fall from grace as she finds herself in a vulnerable position. The door to the room shuts firmly and Rosways' eyes blaze with anger and determination, betraying her inner struggle against the humiliating circumstances. Leon smirks, tightening his grip on Rosways as he mockingly calls her his wife and suggests they get started. His expression shifts to a cold, determined gaze, showing his complete control over the moment. Rosways' eyes fill with helplessness and exhaustion, but she barely responds, seeming resigned to her fate. 3 days later, the scene shifts to a bright, majestic castle standing tall under a clear blue sky. 2 sisters stand by their father's bedside, worried as he hasn't woken up in 3 days. They wonder if he might be dead, but one of them calmly reassures the other to wait and see. Suddenly, Leon reacts as he's kicked in the face, groaning in pain from the unexpected hit. Noah, her foot still on his face, remarks that their father isn't dead yet. Startled and somewhat hurt, Leon questions if any child would treat their parent this way. As Leon regains awareness, He finds himself in bed with Miwan by his side, who eagerly reacts to his movement as if she's been waiting for this moment. With joy, Miwan announces that he's regained consciousness, while Noah sits nearby observing. Confused, Leon wonders when he even fainted. As he slowly sits up in bed, Rosways calmly offers to help Leon recall the events that led to his unconsciousness. A flashback reveals him being struck hard by Rosways. He remembers how the dragon mark on him became powerless after that night, triggering the painful moment when he was struck. Leon reflects on Rosways' ruthlessness, realizing her power is overwhelming and could have easily ended him if he had been any weaker. Still recovering, Leon sits quietly on the bed, watching Rosways, who has turned her back to him. He notes her beauty, despite her intimidating strength, and realizes she is a dragon over 200 years old. Miwan, noticing her father's stillness, wonders why he isn't moving, speculating that he is simply stunned by their mother's appearance, hinting at the awe she inspires. Rosways is caught off guard as someone abruptly strikes a nearby surface, drawing her attention. Her expression shifts in surprise. Leon reaches down to pick up a flower accessory from the floor and gently places it on Rosways, stating that it suits her. Rosways reacts with surprise at Leon's thoughtful gesture, questioning if he's ever done something like this for other women. Leon chuckles and explains that as a child, he used to comb his master's donkey, claiming he has some skill in it. Miwan looks up at Leon and innocently asks what a donkey is, catching him off guard. Smiling, Leon explains that donkeys are similar to dragons, but much smaller, stubborn, and make humming sounds when unhappy. He then imitates a donkey's behavior, amusing Miwan with his antics. Rosways watches intently, noting the similarity between a donkey's stubbornness and her own personality. Leon suddenly recoils in fear as Rosways strikes him, sending him reeling. He clutches his stomach, wincing in pain, but reassures Miwan that he's fine when she asks if he's okay. Rosways assigns the task of teaching the girls to write, declaring that Leon will handle it. Leon, taken aback, realizes he's been volunteered without any say. Miwan excitedly cheers that their father will teach them, while Noah confidently claims she already knows how. The two girls race off to the study room, eagerly discussing which colorful pens they want to use. Meanwhile, Rosways informs Leon that her sister's coming to visit, and that she doesn't want him appearing in front of her. Leon looks surprised, puzzled as to why he's being told to avoid the meeting, and voices his frustration about not being allowed to meet her family. Rosways reminds him that he is now part of the Silver Dragon clan and was in a coma for 2 years due to a mysterious illness. She explains that he has only recently woken up, emphasizing the complexity of his new situation. Rosways warns him that if he is ever forced to meet her sister, he must stick to the false identity she has crafted for him. Rosways emphasizes the importance of keeping up the story, and Leon listens intently, still processing the situation. With a serious expression, he acknowledges her instructions, respectfully addressing her as Your Majesty. After Rosways leaves, Leon questions whether he'll truly follow her orders, standing alone as he begins to plot ways to embarrass her in front of her sister. The scene shifts to the children's study room in Silver Dragon Castle, where Leon sits at a table, teaching Noah and Miwan to write their names. He demonstrates patiently, guiding them step by step as they watch attentively. After writing their names as examples, he asks them to practice by copying his writing. Miwan looks excited, while Noah's expression remains more serious. Studying Leon's writing, Noah comments that it isn't as good as her mother's, hinting at her high expectations. Leon feels a twinge of frustration at the comparison, sensing the pressure to meet her standards. When Leon stands to leave, Miwan curiously asks what he's planning. He replies that he forgot to deliver something to their mother, and assures them he'll check on their progress later, though his carefree attitude leaves Noah doubting his seriousness. Miwan teases her sister for seeming happy, which Noah sternly denies, insisting they focus and practice as instructed. She looks down with a soft blush, momentarily thoughtful. The scene transitions to the grand gates of Silver Dragon Castle, where soldiers and prominent figures gather for a formal event. There, Isha Melkvi, the Red Dragon Queen, stands confidently, her striking red hair and royal attire making a powerful impression. Rosways rushes to embrace her sister, their close bond evident in the warm reunion. The reunion is filled with warmth as Aisha and Rosways joyfully greet each other after a long time apart. Isha Melkvi compliments her sister, noting how vibrant she looks since their last meeting. Rosway seems a bit taken aback by the compliment, modestly disagreeing. Curious, Isha inquires about Rosway's husband, having heard that he has finally woken up. She wonders aloud why she hasn't been allowed to see him yet. Rosways explains that her husband is unwell and cannot meet with Isha at the moment. Disappointed, Isha admits she was eager to see what the Dragon King who kidnapped her sister looks like. With a teasing tone, she hints at the dynamics of Rosway's relationship, suggesting that their quick marriage and child imply a strong bond. Rosways becomes defensive, firmly rejecting the notion that marriage and children necessarily signify a good relationship. She firmly denies any attraction to her husband, both in the past and for the future. Aisha smirks, commenting on her sister's toughness, recognizing that her strong personality remains unchanged. Rosways cheerfully suggests they take a walk in the garden to chat, showcasing their strong bond. Aisha agrees, allowing her sister to lead the way. The sisters stroll together, smiling and enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, Leon observes the two sisters from a distance using a telescope, recognizing Rosway's sister. He watches intently, gathering information as he studies them from afar. Determined to test the range of the dragon pattern, he seeks to discover how far its power can extend. As Aisha and Rosways wander through a beautiful garden filled with blooming roses, they discuss the recent instability within the Dragon Clan. They note that the Red Flame Dragon King has been particularly active lately, raising concerns among them. Rosways is taken aback when she hears the name Constantine mentioned in connection with the recent turmoil. She questions her sister, recalling that Constantine has been missing for years. Isha speculates that he may be attempting to expand his territory, using the current chaos to his advantage. Suddenly, Rosways reacts in shock, her body glowing with energy as something unexpected occurs. Her eyes widen as she senses something unusual happening around her. Noticing the change in her sister's demeanor, Aisha asks, "What is wrong?" Rosways quickly brushes it off with a smile, assuring her sister that nothing is amiss, and encouraging her to continue speaking. However, Rosways can't help but think about the Dragon Slayer, reminiscing about past incidents. In her thoughts, she mutters a frustrated remark about Leon, referring to him as a damn Dragon Slayer. Clearly irritated by his actions, Isha grows serious and advises that they strengthen the border defenses. She mentions sending someone named Shin Long to keep in touch in case there are any new developments. Rosways senses something and becomes alert as she thinks to herself. At that moment, Aisha notices her change in demeanor and asks, "What's wrong?" Rosways tries to dismiss her concern, replying, "Nothing, sister. Please continue." However, in her mind, she curses someone, muttering, "Damn Dragon Slayer." Isha continues talking, stating that they need to strengthen the border defenses and that she will send someone to contact her if there are any developments. Amused by the idea of the dragon pattern, Isha mentions how young people are casually playing around with it. Meanwhile, Leon reclines comfortably in a chair, contemplating how long Rosways can endure the effects of the dragon pattern. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and Rosways storms into the room, clearly upset. She grabs Leon by his collar, accusing him of deliberately activating the dragon pattern to embarrass her in front of her sister. Seeing Rosways' anger, Leon quickly decides to play innocent and fool her. He looks affectionately at her, making a pitiful face as he gazes into her eyes. "Is it wrong for me to want you?" he asks. Rosways is taken aback and lets go of his collar, her face turning red as a tomato at his unexpected words. To hide her reaction, she covers her face with her hand. Leon smiles to himself, thinking with surprise that his act seems to be working. He wonders if, at the very least, she's disgusted with him now. Blushing, Rosways turns away and calls him shameless, reminding him that he's just a defeated prisoner who shouldn't be speaking such nonsense. She tells him to put away his dirty thoughts. Leon remains silent, smiling calmly, while Rossweiss glances at him with a flushed face, thinking, I came here to confront him, so why did his words throw me off? She leaves with an angry blush, warning him that he got lucky this time. But if he tries something like this again, she won't let it slide. Leon, with a teasing look, thinks to himself how terrified he is, amused that a single word could leave her so flustered. He reflects that the dragon pattern really is powerful. As he ponders, his face warms, and he realizes his heart beats faster whenever he thinks of her. Composing himself, he mutters, Cosmode, wake up. Stop thinking about nonsense. He reminds himself that the kids are still waiting for him to return. But it's clear that he and Rossweiss are beginning to feel something for each other, marking a new turn in the story. In the study room, Noah practices writing diligently, while Muen, slacking off, wonders aloud why Dad hasn't come back yet. The romance between Leon and Rossweiss begins to reach a new stage, adding twists and surprises to the plot. Later that night at Silver Dragon Castle, Aisha waves goodbye to Rossweiss, saying she'll head out tonight. Rossweiss, waving back, reminds her sister to be careful on the road. Aisha transforms into her red dragon form, playfully asking Rossweiss to let her meet her husband next time. Rossweiss agrees, promising they'll have more time to talk. As Aisha, accompanied by her knights, flies back to her own castle, Rossweiss watches her sister's departure with a pensive look. I thought there'd be some trouble in this chapter, she thinks. But it seems Aisha's departure wasn't quite what I expected. Who knows what the future holds for this family's mischief? With a serious expression, Rossweiss grits her teeth, staring ahead with determination. Damn Dragon Slayer, she thinks. He still hasn't learned his lesson. She decides tonight will be different. Meanwhile, Leon, on the other side of the castle, sneezes repeatedly, wondering if someone's talking about him. He settles down to read the story of the young dragon as a bedtime story for Noah and Muen. As he reads, the girls drift off to sleep, looking absolutely adorable. Smiling, he quietly closes the book, gently tucking them in and whispering, Don't catch a cold. Leon slowly exits the room, taking care not to disturb his sleeping daughters. Just as he shuts the door, Rossweiss suddenly slams her hand against it with a loud thud, startling him. Her serious expression catches him off guard as she asks, Where are you planning to go? With an awkward look, Leon glances at her. Is your sister gone? He asks. With a sly smile, Rossweiss replies, We still have things to settle tonight. She grabs his collar, dragging him forward with determination. Leon protests, but she pulls him along, ignoring his resistance. In the Silver Dragon Queen's bedroom, Leon places a tub of hot water down with a loud clatter in front of her. The hot water's ready, he says, looking at her with a hint of exasperation. What do you need it for? Rossweiss stretches her legs out in front of Leon, looking at him with an air of superiority. I'm exhausted from walking all day, she says. Wash my feet. Leon stares at her, stunned. His expression shifts to serious disbelief as he takes in her request. Rossweiss, with a commanding look, adds, Enough with the nonsense, just do it. This is your punishment for today. Sighing in frustration, Leon removes her heels, thinking to himself, I'm a dragon slayer, and now I'm reduced to being a foot-washing servant for a dragon. As he looks down at her feet, he can't help but wonder just how many dragon slayers have fallen under them. Rossweiss notices him staring and frowns. What is he thinking, she wonders. A blush creeps onto her face as she begins to suspect he might have a strange fascination. Before she can say anything, Leon grins mischievously and plunges her feet into the hot water. Get down here, he says half playfully. The water is scalding, and Rossweiss immediately recoils, her expression shocked. She kicks him under the chin, shouting, It's too hot, you fool! Her kick sends him flying back, and Leon hits the ground, coughing up blood. With a cold, piercing look, Rossweiss steps onto his chest, pinning him down. You did this on purpose, didn't you? She asks icily. Trying to get back at me? Leon, his defiance undiminished, gives her an arrogant smile. Well, you're the one who demanded I wash your feet. Rossweiss's cheeks flush as she looks down at him. Seems you still haven't learned your lesson, she says, slowly dragging her foot down his chest. Her tone drops to a mocking whisper. I bet you never thought you'd end up beneath a dragon. As Rosweiss presses her foot down on his lower body, Leon feels a wave of conflicting emotions. His face flushes from her touch, and in a strained voice, he tells her to stop. He's torn between the humiliation of the situation and an odd sense of comfort. Rosweiss, smirking with a touch of arrogance, leans in. I'm curious, she says coolly. Just how long can you endure this? Leon, still flushed, glances up at her defiantly. I won't give in to this dragon's games, he thinks, steadying himself. With a sudden move, he catches her leg, and as he stands, he grins confidently. I've had pigs' trotters, cows' trotters, goats' trotters, but dragons' trotters. Now that's something new. Rosweiss's eyes widen, her face turning red as she asks, What are you doing? Without missing a beat, Leon playfully bites her leg, exclaiming, Tonight's snack, raw dragon claws. As Leon bites her leg, Rosweiss screams angrily, threatening to kill him. The next morning, Moon and Noah wake up. Noah is fully alert, while Moon is still half asleep. When Rosweiss enters the room, her leg wrapped in bandages, Moon notices and asks, Mom, why are you limping? Rosweiss brushes it off, replying, It's nothing. Meanwhile, Leon sports a bandage on his cheek. Noticing it, Moon turns to him, asking, Dad, why do you have bruises on your face? Mirroring Rosweiss's posture, Leon folds his arms and says, It's nothing. Moon, puzzled and curious, places her hands on her hips, staring at both Leon and Rosweiss with a questioning expression. Suddenly, an idea pops into her head, and her face lights up with excitement. You must have been playing some fun game without me, she exclaims, raising her hand. I want to play too. Noah, arms folded, watches her sister with a blank expression, silently observing the scene. Later, Leon and Rosweiss walk in the garden outside the Silver Dragon Castle. Both look away from each other, each lost in their own thoughts. One maid nudges another, pointing and saying, Look, the queen and the prince are on a date. The blue-haired maid giggles, adding, What a lovely couple they are. However, she then remarks that they seem a bit distant. The other maid watches them contentedly. Rosweiss and Leon continue walking in silence, the quiet between them stretching. Leon, watching Rosweiss from behind, wonders how things ended up this way. He thinks back, recalling how she had earlier suggested they take a walk together. Shocked, he'd asked why he should walk with her. Rosweiss had replied that it was his duty to keep up the appearance of family harmony for the sake of outsiders. In the garden, Leon glances at Rosweiss, sensing something unusual about her today. She's not typically this proactive, and he wonders what she might be planning. Meanwhile, Moon and Noah, hiding behind a nearby tree, observe their mom and dad. Moon mutters to herself that Dad is so clueless, he can't even hold hands. Suddenly, an idea pops into her mind. With determination and bright eyes, she clenches her tiny fists and declares that she's going to help them. Noah, taken aback, tries to stop her. Wait, Moon, she says, but Moon doesn't listen. She jumps up and runs toward them. Noah calls out again, telling her to leave them alone, but Moon, already in motion, ignores her words. As she nears, Moon calls out to her parents. Hearing her voice, Leon and Rosweiss turn, surprised to see her racing toward them. Leon asks why Moon followed him, but before he can finish, Moon grabs both his and Rosweiss's hands, quickly linking them together. Both Leon and Rosweiss are startled by her sudden action. With a cheerful smile, Moon says, When you take a walk, you're supposed to hold hands. Then, with a quick spin, she runs back, saying she's going to play with her sister. Leon watches her leave, wondering where this child learned such things. Back at the tree, Noah pinches Moon's cheeks, scolding her for not listening. Moon, tearing up cutely, admits she was wrong, promises not to do it again, and asks her sister to let go. Leon and Rosweiss stand in silence, still holding hands, wearing blank, confused expressions. Blushing, Leon looks away and says that this is a bit unexpected, asking what he should do. Rosweiss, also blushing, replies softly that it's okay. They can just hold hands for now. As Leon and Rosweiss continue walking, Leon remarks that she seems unusually calm today, which makes him feel a bit uneasy. Rossweiss responds with a smirk, saying it seems like she's finally tamed him, and now that they're getting along, he's the one who feels unsettled. While they chat and stroll, Moon and Noah watch them from behind a tree, curious and observant. Leon glances at Rossweiss and reflects on how she has always presented herself as a dignified queen before others. Yet, he didn't expect her to be so flustered by something as simple as holding hands. He wonders if her strictness as a mother might stem from not knowing how to connect with her children. Leon then brings up the way Moon and Noah address her, noting that they always call her mother in front of others. He gently suggests that the usual way of addressing parents is mom and dad. He points out that while Moon calls him dad, she calls Rossweiss mother and wonders if it makes her seem more distant to them. Rossweiss looks away and after a pause, asks if there's really that much of a difference between mother and mom. Leon, looking at Rossweiss with a bright smile, suggests that there is a difference and encourages her to have the kids call her mom instead. He bets they'll feel closer to her that way. Rossweiss's face flushes red, caught off guard by Leon's cheerfulness. After composing herself, she nods and says she'll try it next time. Leon, surprised by her sudden enthusiasm, asks why she's speeding up. As they continue walking in the garden, Rossweiss suddenly asks if Leon feels homesick. He raises an eyebrow and questions why she's bringing it up, since she won't let him go back anyway. Rossweiss admits that she can't send him home, but mentions there's something that might help ease his homesickness a bit. Leon, curious but silent, follows her until they arrive at the castle's large warehouse doors. As they stand before it, he wonders aloud what it might be. Rossweiss explains that it doesn't have an official name. He can call it a warehouse, utility room, or whatever he likes. She unlocks the door with a key and leads him inside. As Leon looks around, he exclaims, "The dragon's treasure trove." Picking up a bracelet, he comments that if it were in the Empire, it could easily be worth hundreds of thousands of gold coins. Rossweiss tells him that the bracelet was a gift from her grandmother when she was a child, and that, besides the spoils of war, the room holds items with personal significance for her. Leon glances at her thoughtfully, remarking that he hasn't heard her speak much about her family, aside from her sister. Rossweiss explains that she never met her parents and was raised, along with her sister, by their grandmother. Leon, surprised, shares that his own story is similar. He grew up in an orphanage, not knowing his parents, until he was later adopted by his master and his wife. Leon looks at Rossweiss and asks why she brought him here. Opening a treasure chest, she replies that she has something that might temporarily help him forget his troubles. Leon, still confused, remains silent. When Rossweiss opens the chest, Leon's eyes widen with surprise, and he exclaims, "It's the black gold armor!" Rossweiss smirks and asks if he hasn't always wanted to reclaim this armor. Leon, in disbelief, asks if he's dreaming, and if she's truly going to give it back to him. With a cunning smile and a dark glint in her eyes, Rossweiss confirms it. As Leon reaches out and touches the chest plate of the black armor, a blue light begins to glow. Shocked, he realizes it's enchanted with a dragon mark. Internally, he thinks, "Black gold armor, my faithful friend, how did you fall into her hands?" Rossweiss, still smirking, tells Leon he has finally fallen into her trap. Now furious, Leon clenches his teeth and glares at her. It seems we're about to witness yet another heated encounter between Leon and Rossweiss. Now, Leon seems shocked and confused as he asks Rossweiss what she's planning to do. We can see an activating spell beneath his feet, a dragon pattern sign, indicating that if he touches it, the armor will be automatically activated. Rossweiss, with a confident tone, tells him that she has attached a dragon pattern to the surface of his armor to enhance its properties. After hearing this, Leon feels uneasy and collapses, clutching his chest as if in pain, while cursing Rossweiss in his mind, calling her a despicable dragon woman. He blames himself, thinking he was careless for letting his guard down. While Leon trembles, Rossweiss laughs wickedly, telling him that the enhanced dragon pattern has doubled its effect. She touches his chain, addressing him as her dear dragon slayer, and tauntingly asks if he can endure it, clearly mocking him. Leon, rendered helpless by the effect, softly calls her name Rosweiss before suddenly collapsing. As he lies there, unable to move, he realizes with growing frustration that he's been completely tricked by Rosweiss. Desperately, he thinks, "Damn it, my body won't move," while an undeniable urge surges through him, stronger than ever. Seeing him in this vulnerable state, Rosweiss takes advantage of the situation, approaching him with both kindness and devilish intent. With a sly smile, she tells him, "Did you really think I wouldn't hold a grudge after what you did?" She goes on to say that she has been waiting for her chance to take revenge, and the past few days have only fueled her determination. Now, with his guard down, she has seized the perfect opportunity to fool him. She adds that she didn't expect it would be so easy to trick him, and Leon, still unable to resist, silently curses her. Rosweiss, unable to hold back any longer, seduces him while teasingly asking if her performance has been convincing. Leon, angry and conflicted, shouts, demanding to know if everything she said and did up until now was a lie. Rosweiss simply smiles, correcting him. His doubts are unfounded. She admits that she hasn't lied, that her feelings were real, and she too has begun to fall for him. Smiling warmly, she finally confesses her affection, removing her clothes and all that covers her body. Laughing, she declares that she actually likes being conquered by him, and with a sense of finality, she officially addresses Leon as her husband. Leon lay there, helpless, almost like a bedridden patient, feeling as though this might be the end. But this intensified moment soon transformed into a joyful one, as the two began to admit their true feelings, finally acknowledging that they truly loved each other. After a while, Leon, our lucky protagonist, happily sighed, relieved that it was over. Dramatically, he looked up, while Rosweiss watched him with a content expression. Seeing her look, Leon grew annoyed and demanded, in his usual blunt manner, to know why she was staring at him like that. In response, Rosweiss leaned in, grabbed his mouth, and whispered in his ear, "Compared to 2 years ago, the scars on your face have faded a little, but you look more worn by the vicissitudes of life, a little more like a mature man." Unmoved by her words, Leon snapped back, saying she was just trying to trick him again and that he wouldn't fall for it this time. Rosweiss simply smiled at him and remarked, "You've gotten smarter, Leon." Leon, instantly suspicious, looked at her with a questioning expression as she hesitated, stopping mid-sentence with a "but." Rosweiss, blushing, then laughed and said that his health wasn't as good as it used to be. Hearing this, Leon's eyes widened in shock, feeling as though his whole world had shattered with just that one sentence. His face went pale, imagining that she was implying he was no longer as fit as he once was. His mind raced, and as his thoughts spiraled, his jaw dropped wider and wider at the implication that he wasn't as good as before. Finally, he let out a loud scream, overwhelmed by his own fears and wild imagination. The next day at Silver Dragon Castle, Leon appeared with dark circles and bags under his eyes. As he opened the door, he announced his arrival, saying, "I'm here." Entering the room, he found Rosweiss and Noah waiting inside. Rosweiss folded her arms and greeted him with a "Good morning," smirking and mockingly remarking, "It seems you didn't sleep well last night." Gritting his teeth in frustration, Leon replied that it was all because of what she had said. Laughing, Rosweiss teasingly claimed, "I don't remember saying anything at all." From the sidelines, Noah watches the exchange between Leon and Rosweiss, thinking, "It's starting again." Rosweiss shifts the conversation, mentioning that the entrance exam for St. Heath Academy is very strict, and tells Leon he should begin tutoring Noah on dragon knowledge today. As she moves closer, leaning in and whispering in his ear, she taunts him, saying that for now, he can only demonstrate his value in other areas. Hearing this, Leon, fueled by anger, snaps back that he just wasn't in the best shape yesterday. With a determined expression, he points a finger at Rosweiss and loudly declares that he'll make sure Noah passes the test. However, he adds that, in return, he wants something of equal value from her. Rosweiss smirks, saying she's willing to agree to his request, but warns that his demand can't be too excessive. Leon firmly replies that a promise is a promise. Laughing, Rosweiss walks away, telling him he should study hard. With a mocking tone, she calls him dear and warns him not to get too tired. Fueled by anger, Leon shouts after her, "That female dragon! She's done!" Rosweiss waves dismissively as she walks away. Noah, observing the interaction, asks Leon why he quarrels with her mom. Folding his arms, Leon denies it, saying it's just their daily communication. Then, surprised, he asks Noah what she just called her mother. Noah replies, "Mom." Taken aback, Leon steps closer and asks if she was told to change to that name. He then inquires whether she prefers the old name or the current one. Noah, looking away with a slight blush, replies that she prefers the current one. Leon smiles brightly at her, saying he knew they'd love it. Surprised by her father's cheerful demeanor, Noah remains silent, simply looking at him. As she turns to leave, she asks when they can start studying. Leon, caught off guard, calls out to her, telling her to wait for him. And that's the end of the video. See you in the next chapter.